Listeners, beware. This podcast contains themes of the macabre and does not shy away from the details. Our content is graphic and our language is colorful. We might not be your cup of tea, so listener discretion is strongly advised. You have tuned in to The Killer Tea, a podcast hosted by two best friends with a proclivity to decipher the deeply demented minds of murderers. Welcome to episode 8 of The Killer Tea. Today we'll be discussing Jerry BRUDOS, the shoe fetish killer.
We are your hosts, Christina
and Chelsea.
And for the next hour, we will be the purveyors of the fucked up bullshit.
Murder, murder, murder.
All the murder. We are actually going to be recording back-to-back episodes today.
Yeah.
So this will be a first for us. We actually want to kind of make this the normal. So we were going to try and do a third tonight, but then we decided on a very special female killer, and she deserves our full attention.
She deserves a lot more than we were prepared to give her tonight.
I don't want to talk too much about her, but if you were a goth kid, you definitely knew about this bitch.
Who doesn't know about this bitch? She is well known.
Well the fuck known. All right.
Anyways, I digress.
I digress. So, Jerry BRUDOS.
Yeah.
Yes, we need to talk about this
peach. Fucked up individual.
This motherfucker.
So, yeah, do you want to set the scene or do you want me to set the scene?
I've done it twice now, so you get to set the scene.
Oh, I will set the scene.
Yeah, so you're going to talk murder to me.
I'm going to talk murder to you.
Get sexy. Here we go. Spicy.
All right. So on January 31st, 1939, Jerome BRUDOS was born in Webster, South Dakota. He was the unplanned second child to Henry and Eileen BRUDOS. So this was an unplanned pregnancy. And while it was unplanned,
Eileen wanted a girl.
Eileen desperately wanted a girl. And when she got little Jerry, she was furious.
Yeah, was not pleased at all.
I mean, we're talking like next level, not just like that little like smidgen of disappointment that you sometimes
if you're
feel.
A parent, you know, sometimes you might get really psyched to be able to have a certain gender of child that you align yourself with. And
I mean, and sometimes, you know, I think a lot of moms experience where you're finding out what you're having and you really have your heart set on wanting a girl, and they're like, oh, you're having a boy, and it's like, oh. But yay!
She did not have
she didn't have that but yay.
Ever.
No, she was disgusted with him. So
she made sure he didn't ever forget it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Jerry had an older brother, Larry. So as if that's not confusing, Larry and Jerry. Yeah. So
that's such a 1940s name combination.
It really is.
It's so,
But Larry was like the apple of his mother's eye. This boy could do no wrong. He was treated very, very well by his mother, and she made it very clear to Jerry that he was not wanted and not loved. And I mean, if we're talking about mothers being terrible to their children, if you are familiar with Ed Kemper, I've heard that his mother was very much like Ed Kemper's mother in her treatment of her son.
And if we haven't made this point very well known at this period in time, let me just emphasize it again. If you treat your children like shit and you create trauma in their lives, it affects their brain development.
They might become a serial killer.
This is how you make a serial killer. I mean, not really, but maybe, but kind of,
Yeah.
but sort of.
So Jerry was physically and mentally abused by his mother. And I think it's funny because I was listening to a podcast when I was doing my research for him. And I don't remember what podcast it was. It might have been The Last Murder
On the
on the Left, I think, is the one I was listening to. I want to make sure that we start really mentioning who we're talking about. And they were talking about how, similar to Ed Kemper's mom, Jerry's father was a raging alcoholic and was supposed to be a pretty, like, intimidating man on his own. But he was also apparently terrified of his wife.
It's, why do some people become parents? Just why? Just
I mean, if you don't
why?
want the boy, give him up for adoption. Like, give the kid a chance.
My God. Well,
Anyways,
so one day, our little tyke, little Jerome,
at the age of 5,
he's playing around and he's at the junkyard and he discovers a set of women's high heels and he just thinks they're the snazziest things in the whole world. He wears them motherfuckers all the way home. He's proud of them.
I mean, he's 5.
He's
okay.
5.
A, why is your 5-year-old playing in a junkyard?
Yeah.
Oh, because you don't love said 5-year-old.
Yeah, like
that makes sense.
Could you ever fucking imagine letting your 5-year-old out of the house and just
No.
okay.
No.
And then of all fucking places, a junkyard. And then it comes home with shoes, women's shoes, and you lose your fucking cookies over it.
She lost her ever-loving mind. She flipped out, she berated him for it, and then she burned the shoes in front of him.
Yeah, in order to get him to stop playing with them. But the seed was already sowed. Like, he, from that point forward, had a thing for women's shoes. As young as 5.
As young as 5.
That I don't know how to psychology that, but that's fascinating to me.
I mean, and I think at that age, he probably didn't really understand why he loved them so much, just that he liked shoes, and specifically women's high-heeled shoes. And this actually kept carrying on.
Yeah.
When he was in the 1st grade, his teacher used to keep an extra pair of shoes in her desk, and he discovered these shoes and tried to steal them, and went as far as trying to hide them under a pile of like some stuffed animals or hid them amongst the toys, and his plan was to take them later. Well, another student caught him doing this and told on him, and the teacher obviously made him give them back.
Yeah.
And he was pretty embarrassed.
Yeah, the humiliation definitely was a theme kind of throughout his whole life with this whole the shoe thing.
I couldn't find any evidence if the teacher was like really nasty about it.
What I had read was that she was not nice about it. That she like he had an audience to it, more or less.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that he'd had an audience and that he was really embarrassed and it caused him to leave, but I didn't really get a concrete if she was like outright nasty about it or just more stern, like, hey, you can't take my fucking shoes.
Well, regardless, this incident wasn't enough to make him stop.
No.
So he actually would go throughout his neighborhood as young as 6 and 7 years old, break into other people's houses and steal the shoes. Like, as a little kid. That's so bizarre to me.
He likes the shoes.
And I wonder what his child mind, why there was such a fixation on the shoes. Like, I don't know how to psychology that, and I couldn't find any information available for it.
I mean, fetishes, there's not always a rhyme or reason for why you have a fetish for something. I mean, you like what you like. I mean, sometimes, there is a cause for fetishes, but I mean, some people like feet, and I mean, why? I don't know, but some people think feet are hella attractive. I don't get the appeal,
I
but
guess it's the fact that it started so young is what throws me for a loop, because
but I mean,
can understand like someone like not Richard Trenton Chase, the
Ramirez?
No, fuck, what is his name? We did our very first guy.
Oh, David Parker Ray?
David Parker Ray. I don't know why I always want to fucking call him Richard. Maybe because he's such a fucking
dick.
But yeah, him I understood where his fetishes and stuff came from, because I understood what he went through as a child and the correlation.
But that's what I mean. Like, some fetishes, there isn't.
No rhyme or
There
reason.
is no rhyme or reason. So,
Bizarre.
I mean,
Different.
why do people get off on sucking toes? I mean, I don't. I mean, it's not our place to understand it, but hey, we don't fetish shame on this podcast.
Now I'm shaming. That's nasty.
Stop shaming people's fetishes.
You can get fungus.
You know what?
Infections.
Hey, you know, everyone has their thing.
The 5-second rule.
Everyone has their thing.
Everybody
okay?
has their thing.
Everyone has
That's
their thing.
true. I'm sorry.
Jerry's was fucking shoes, okay?
Well, you brought up the toe sucking, and I'm just
Well,
not here
you know,
for it.
feet, shoes, it correlates.
Chelsea's very open-minded. Apparently, I draw the line at feet sucking.
There's not a prude bone in my body. Let's be real.
All right. So anyways,
I think also we should talk that Jerry, between the ages of like 7 and 8, he had a lot of medical issues. Like, he had a ton. When in between those like 2 years, he had measles, he had laryngitis, he had persistent headaches, and then he had to have several operations to deal with multiple fungal infections on his extremities.
Maybe it came from toe sucking.
He wasn't sucking toes, Christina. You dirty bitch.
Okay.
But I mean, he had, like, you know, some crazy medical issues for being 7 and 8. I mean, measles at that time, like, okay, that's not that. And laryngitis also isn't that abnormal.
Well, did you read the bit about how this, with the headaches and stuff, how his school, he was getting frequent headaches that were very, very severe, and the school was like, maybe glasses will fix that.
Yeah.
And the optometrist was like,
the optometrist
no.
didn't really see a need for him to have glasses, so they gave him a very, very weak prescription.
To act as like a placebo?
Yeah, and it said that it helped for a little bit, but the headaches kind of persisted, and they also had his IQ tested, and that was considered to be within like a normal range.
So some of the symptoms that they were kind of describing to me reminded me a little bit of a TBI, but I couldn't find anything that mentioned possibly having a TBI. And it also reminded me of sometimes the people that have crap. Oh my God, it's something with your actual eyes, and I can't remember. It's gone now. But anyways, it seemed unusual.
Yeah, especially for a kid of that age to have such horrible, persistent headaches. It makes me think that there probably was something going on.
A different underlying
and the
issue
science just wasn't there
to figure it out
at that point to kind of figure out what was going on.
So as a preteen, Jerry would steal the underwear and the clothes of his friends' sisters. So we have escalated from not just the shoes. He's also making friends with people, specifically boys that have sisters, and stealing shoes. But now we've escalated to underwear.
Right. I mean, his family moves around a lot. So at this point, they've moved to Wallace Pond, Oregon. And their neighbors have teenage girls. And Jerry would break into their house with their brother and play with their clothes, and it would go as far as him stealing their underwear.
Yeah, so as a teenager, by the age of 15, it's perfectly normal for boys to have sexual fantasies. Like, it's perfectly normal. However, Jerry's was not normal. His revolved greatly around misogyny and control and just the things that are a bit much.
He used to fantasize about kidnapping, making women obey him,
enslaving them
until
they followed his sexual commands.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a bit much.
Weird shit. And at this point, I mean, let's be real. Wet dreams are a totally normal thing for teenage boys to have. It's a common occurrence, happens frequently. But because his mother loathed him so much, when she found out that this was happening to him, she would humiliate him by making him wash his sheets by hand while berating him for these normal pubescent boy acts.
At least in this circumstance, it wasn't just him. Like, she was equally bad about the sexual stuff with his brother. It was just sexuality in general.
Yeah, she was disgusted by sexuality in general. And actually, to go back, when Jerry was 13, his brother was a few years older than him, and he actually discovered that his brother had been drawing pictures of naked women, and he picked the lock on the box that the pictures were hidden in, and his mom caught him looking at these drawings, and Jerry took the fall for his brother. He actually took the blame for it, and his brother didn't get in trouble that time.
Yeah, sexual repression. It's a motherfucker, y'all.
I mean, we are talking about the 1940s here.
Yes. I know. There's always an excuse why people are stupid, ignorant, selfish.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I really hope we've come further than that now.
Yeah, please.
So,
please God.
Jerry is breaking into houses, stealing women's shoes and underwear, and he actually begins using them for masturbation at this point.
Yeah.
So
it's progressing and escalating for sure.
So the shoe fetish has gone from him being a 5-year-old little boy and just really loving shoes, women's shoes in particular, but shoes, into now he's old enough to understand that he is fascinated with these in a sexual manner.
So we're nearing 1956, which is where we really see a turn in his behavior. Whereas before it's weird and uncomfortable, now it is officially escalated to assault.
Yes.
His family moved back to Oregon, and as a teenager, Jerome started stalking local young women, and he would attack them, but he wasn't like raping them at this point. He would attack them, choke them out, and steal their underwear.
Or their shoes.
In their shoes.
Yeah. So one instance in particular is he lured a girl to his house with the promise of helping her get her underwear back. So she knows he has her underwear. It's fucking weird. And he's like, hey, I'll give it back to you, but you got to come to my house. So when she gets to the house, she is attacked by a quote unquote man with a mask and a knife, where she is forced to strip and photos are taken of her. The man leaves, she gets up, gets dressed, and runs. As she's running away, she runs into Jerry,
who's like, what happened?
Who claims that the intruder locked him in the family barn, and that's why he couldn't come to her aid.
It's so ridiculous.
So she doesn't buy this, though.
No, not at all. Fuck this dude.
She is like, you're full of shit, bro, and she reports this incident to the police. But nothing's really done about it.
So, at the age of 17, Jerome was sent to psychiatric hospital for attacking yet another woman, but this time he lured her to a barn where she turned him down, and then he beat her profusely.
Beats the absolute piss out of her. And he gets caught by another couple.
Yeah, he gets caught. They send him to a psychiatric hospital. And while he's there, he is unabashed about his sexual fantasies. He relays all of this to the psychiatrist.
Oh, yeah. They actually diagnosed him with, this is a direct quote from an article I read on him, that he is diagnosed with adjustment reaction of adolescence with sexual deviations and fetishism.
Can you normal people talk that for me?
No. No, I can't, because I don't think that is a common topic now. My kind of thinking on what that means is that he probably isn't adjusting well to puberty and becoming like an adolescent. Like,
so it's a really fancy way of them saying that they think it's just a phase and it's a temporary dysfunction.
Yes, essentially they think that he might be borderline schizophrenic, but this was a pretty common diagnosis for that time period. Pretty much if you had any mental disturbance, they said you were borderline schizophrenic. So, I mean, I don't really take much stock in that. But they kept him hospitalized for 9 months.
But they allowed him to go to school.
Yeah, he was allowed to go to school during this time. And they really didn't think he was a danger to society. And so after 9 months, they let him go.
Even though he beat one woman and then attacked another and threatened her with a knife. But yeah, it's fine.
Well, I think the way they're looking at it is that he wasn't dealing with the fetishism well and the sexual deviance. And so I'm sure he underwent a lot of therapy for that kind of stuff. And they thought that was probably about the end of it.
I still can't get on with that logic. I think that's just bizarre. Well, regardless, he graduated while being institutionalized, and he eventually became an electrician. His GPA was 30% lower than his graduating class.
Yeah, he didn't graduate very well or very high.
Yeah, so something that's interesting is he's one of those people that is really, really smart but just doesn't perform well in school.
Yeah, I mean, it happens. I mean, my dad was like that.
Yeah,
So.
people described him as being very clearly intelligent, but he just lacked the motivation to perform well, to really put his back into it. He did eventually attempt to go to college, but
he failed out of that pretty quickly and ends up just enlisting in the Army instead.
Yeah.
So he's stationed at Fort Ord in California and did basic training in Fort Gordon, Georgia. And while he's in the military, he begins to have dreams about a Korean girl seducing him.
And it just gets weird. There's this, I read a lot, and it doesn't really elaborate on what causes him to go to the Army chaplain.
Well, my thinking is he was in the psychiatric unit for 9 months, right? I'm sure part of that involved ways for him to cope with these urges and things like that.
He just freely went?
I'm thinking that he freely went as a, oh no, it's happening again kind of reaction.
Oh, I see what you mean.
And so I think he went to seek help. And the Army chaplain basically was like, yeah, you need to go talk to the psychiatrist.
And the
psychiatrist
is like,
Dr. Barry.
Y'all, dude, you're fucked up.
Yeah, he discharges him from the Army in 1959. So this poor guy is only in the Army for less than a year.
Yeah,
he doesn't make it very long. And I mean, bless his heart, he tried.
So it's now 1960. Jerome moves back in with his parents, but is forced to move in to their shed. And, needless to say, he starts assaulting women again.
Well, yeah, I think him going back home was probably
a bad idea.
I mean, with the intense hatred from his mother and not having the support he needs, he is out and about on the town, running errands, doing his thing.
Broad daylight.
And he notices a young girl, and he gets super excited by her, which, okay.
She's on her lunch break. He grabs her.
He follows her, grabs her until she's unconscious, takes her shoes, and sleeps with them. Like not like has sex with them, but like cuddles up with them and sleeps with them.
Oh,
fucking weird. So in 1962, he is trying to better himself and gets his FCC license and starts working at the local radio station. And this is actually where he meets his future wife, Darcy Metzler, and she is only 17 at the time, and he is 22.
So, I mean, he is significantly older than her by today's standards, but that was
pretty normal.
But regardless, Darcy's parents were not on Team Jerry.
No,
at
they
all.
Did not approve of that relationship.
So one author that I read argued that perhaps she was enticed by him because, it's this older man that's got his shit together and he works this nice job and, all the things that a 1960s housewife
really wanted.
But also, as soon as her parents disapproved, it was kind of like, ooh, now it's even more enticing.
I mean, let's be honest.
Yes.
When you were 17 and your parents told you not to do something, did that not make you want to do it 1,000 times worse?
Was
that thing
exactly.
that you were not supposed to be doing.
But, so he's 22, 23 years old, and he's still a virgin. So now this young 17-year-old girl, Darcy, is interested in him. And of course,
I mean, let's think about it. Not to, give him sympathy, but this guy has never had, a loving attention from another female in his life.
Yeah, he doesn't.
So I'm sure the second that she gives him that tiny bit of positive female attention, he just, latches on to that and doesn't want to let it go.
Yeah, so this is just my opinion. It's totally unsubstantiated. I think that she probably wanted out of her parents' house and wanted to have the white picket fence and was kind of just as opportunistic and naive as Jerome was. That, again, totally unsubstantiated, just me observing everything, and that's my own hypothesis.
Oh, yeah, and I think that's probably, pretty accurate.
Well, regardless,
they get married a couple months later.
They met, got married a couple months later, and she's pregnant.
Yep, so their first daughter is born, who is named Megan.
And the BRUDOS family, the new BRUDOS family, begins to move frequently as Jerome isn't able to hold down a fucking job.
Much like his father.
Yeah. These two things are very similar.
Yeah, so they're moving constantly up and down the West Coast. But in 1967, the family finally settles in Portland, Oregon, and they have their second child, Jason.
Well, before we get to Jason, so I want to comment on this period of his life from 1963 to 1967. So he really doesn't do any attacking, any
because I think he's getting the attention that he needs from Darcy.
So from Darcy, and again, that's another thing is, so he lost his virginity. He married this young, cute, submissive wife, and then having the family kind of seems to like satisfy his appetite for at least a time. He's happy. I mean, more or less, he's happy. And he's happy because he's able to control Darcy, which is a huge thing about this whole attacking, stealing shoes, all that stuff. It's a control thing.
Yeah.
And he even admits that later. But when they settle into their home, he takes over the garage, the lower garage. So I'm assuming, because my parents had a garage and a lower garage, I'm assuming that it was they had a garage attached to their house and then a back garage that was used as a workshop.
I mean, that could be it.
And well, every time I hear about it, it's referred to as
a lower garage. Yeah, I've heard it referred to that way as well.
But he converts this into a dark room where he develops photos of Darcy that are risque, like, and she doesn't really know what's going on. She's fine to leave him to his own devices in there.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't even let her. She was never allowed in unless she used the intercom to buzz in, and then he was ready for her. If he wasn't, she was not allowed in there.
Right.
And she didn't ask any questions about it. I'm sorry. I'd ask all the fucking questions.
1960s.
It's just like
women knew their place back then. There weren't all these wild creatures that we have today.
Young whippersnappers and their feminism. Jesus. Well, anyways, so
that takes us to Jason.
Yeah, Jason being born. So Darcy's pretty much over this shit. She's matured.
She's kind of grown a lot and basically just tells Jerry that he's not allowed in the delivery room. Absolutely not.
Which was crushing for Jerry because he really wanted to have a son.
He was super excited to have his son.
It doesn't really say why. And I don't really
know.
have a speculation other than maybe she was getting disenchanted with him.
Maybe. I mean, it could be that, or it could just be, he had his little girl and now he was going to have a boy and he could do all the boy things.
No, I mean, why she didn't let him in the delivery room?
I don't know. I couldn't find anything on that.
No, I mean, maybe it was a power play.
Could be, or it could just be simple as maybe he was being weird about it. And she was just like, yeah, no, I'm all set. But this really upsets Jerry. And to deal with this, he decides that he's going to go back to stealing women's underwear and shoes.
Well,
and
this time, now that he has sexual experience with his wife, his crimes become escalated because he knows what to do.
Yeah. So he ends up stalking this woman and follows her to her house. And he waits for her to go to sleep. And his plan initially is just to steal her underwear and her shoes. That's as far as his planning is going. But as he's in the process of robbing her, she wakes up and catches him. And instead of just like fleeing, he chokes her out, rapes her, and then flees the scene with her shoes. Doesn't kill her, just chokes her to unconsciousness.
So we have entered a point where he's liking that aspect of it. The whole
we're escalating.
We're
here.
escalated. The whole rape thing. He's into it. But also, Darcy is being a full-time mom with 2 babies, trying to raise them, and she's pretty disenchanted with his dumbass. So their sex life is seriously lacking. She doesn't have enough time for that shit and to entertain his fetishes. So he's having trouble at home, and this is his way to kind of counteract that.
Yeah, if you can call it that.
But so in the epitome of this is he starts throwing a hissy fit and acting out because she's not paying the kind of attention to him that he wants. So what he tries to do is take these unusual and strange images of himself. He takes pictures of him in women's clothing and then leaves it around the house, and he's just sitting there waiting for Darcy to say something, and she literally just fucking ignores it. She's like, I don't have time for this bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, she's just, at this point, she's so disenchanted with their relationship. Mm-hmm. Jerry's true colors are really starting to come out. She's too busy to deal with him. She's just sick of the bullshit. But this just causes things to escalate,
get way worse,
even further.
Unfortunately.
So, January 26, 1968, brings us to Linda Slauson, and she is a door-to-door saleswoman who comes to Jerry's house.
She's selling encyclopedias, and if you can't tell by now, Jerry's really opportunistic.
Yeah.
So this is like a kid in a candy store. This woman just shows up at his front door, and he's able to convince her to come back to his workshop because she's trying to sell him encyclopedias, which I guess that was...
Oh, that was totally a thing.
So funny.
That was totally a thing in the late 60s.
So he lures her back to the workshop, and then he strikes her in the head repeatedly with a 2x4 until she's rendered unconscious.
Yeah, and he tries several different stolen undergarments on her, like strips her naked and tries multiple different like underwear and bra sets on her.
Yeah, but this was his first murder victim. He actually strangled her to death and then dressed her dead body.
Her up as like a doll, and then eventually cut off her left foot, put it in a high-heeled shoe, and stuck it in the freezer.
What the fuck, bro?
And then he put her body into his car, faked a flat tire on a bridge, and then used that excuse to dump her body over. So I have a question.
Okay.
Darcy didn't see this fucking foot in the freezer?
Well, she wasn't allowed into that room.
Oh, so he had a freezer
he had
in the
whole workshop.
Oh,
and even there are some things.
Because I had questions. I was like, how did this bitch?
She probably wouldn't even question a freezer because there's some film that you have to keep in, not necessarily a freezer, but in a refrigerator.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it gets ruined. So she probably, since it's a dark room.
Fair enough. I just was very concerned that she didn't see a fucking foot in the freezer.
Well, there's some questions that come up about Darcy much later on.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
But yes, there are some questions.
I was just very confused on how this bitch didn't see a fucking foot.
1968 and 1969 is really fucking busy for this flaming pile of dog shit.
Can we point out that he did like all of this within a year?
Yeah.
I mean, it was like bam, 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 bam.
His mind. So in
July of 1968, Stephanie Vicky is reported missing.
And then November 26th of 1968, Jan Susan Whitney, a 23-year-old college student at the University of Oregon, also goes missing.
Yep. And then March 27th of 1969, Karen Sprinkler goes missing.
She's just a baby, too. She's only 19.
Witnesses report seeing a large man dressed in drag in the parking garage where Karen's car was found. Mm-hmm. So at this point, there are witnesses to this one. So it gives us a little something to go on.
Less than a month later, Jerry discovers Sharon Wood in a parking garage at the Portland State. So I guess I should note this. His thing is college campuses.
Yeah, he goes to college campuses and hangs out in the parking garage.
Yeah, he stakes them out because, lots of young, attractive women.
That's his thing. He hangs out where there are young, attractive women that, might be by themselves that he can easily subdue.
So he saw that in Sharon Wood. Sharon attempted to fend off Jerry's attack by biting him until it bled. But Jerry beat her unconscious, and an oncoming car caused him to have to flee the scene of the crime. But at the time, the police did not
connect this.
Yeah, these numerous crimes that were all very similar, some way, somehow.
They're not connecting the dots.
They did not connect the dots.
No.
And no judgment, guys, but question mark? Question mark?
Yeah. Well, the very next day on April 22nd, Jerry attempts to abduct 14-year-old Leanne Brumley, but she manages to get away from him, and she actually goes and reports this to the police.
So now we're at April 23rd, so this has been happening all within about
3 days.
Yeah, 3 days, but all within a month of each other from the
March 27th, Karen Sprinkler.
Yeah, from Karen's. So after 2 failed kidnappings, Jerry attempts to get another victim. This time he actually does succeed. Linda Dawn Sally is reported missing by her family. Her car is found abandoned in a parking garage. And what do you know?
The police finally start to connect the goddamn dots.
How many fucking women being attacked in parking garages do you need? But I guess one dead. You need another one dead.
Maybe this is the same guy.
But he actually lured her by posing as a police officer, which was kind of his MO. Sometimes he would, some sort of uniform, some sort of badge. That's how he tricked a lot of girls. But he did strangle her to death, which strangulation, again, is a control thing and something that he'd been doing since he was a teenager.
Yeah. So that takes us then to May 10th of 1969. Linda Saley's body is found in the Long Tom River, and she'd actually been weighed down by a car transmission. And then 50 feet away, Karen Sprinkler's body is found tied to an old engine.
Yeah, 2 days after they found Linda's body, they found Karen's.
And the disgusting thing about poor Karen is her breasts had been cut off, and then he had stuffed the holes in her chest with paper towels and then put a bra over the top.
Yeah, a bra it wasn't even her bra, it was from one of his previous victims.
Oh, what a sick bastard.
Well, you know what he did with her boobs?
Put them in the fucking freezer.
He put them in the freezer, but then this part's so uncomfortable. He made paperweights out of them. Oof.
I wish you could see my face right now. Why? It's just...
God, fuck him. So Jerome gets this idea, which is actually very, very nefarious, and I hate to admit it, but kind of clever at the time.
Yeah.
So he gets this idea to start calling young women at Oregon State University and flirting with them and enticing them to go on a blind date. Probably with the whole secret admirer pitch is what I'm going to guess.
Yeah. It's just this, okay. In 1969, this probably wouldn't have sent off a lot of alarm bells, but this just screams, bitch, this is a bad idea.
Yeah, to us now, but
to us, knowing what we know, yeah.
But that's what I'm thinking is he probably was like pretending to be a secret admirer of them.
Yeah.
Well, regardless, unbeknownst to him, the police had started to put pieces of the puzzle together, and they're like, okay,
this is happening at college campuses. This is where, young women are prevalent, and they begin watching these areas.
And to the police's credit, I forgot to mention this earlier, serial killers are a new thing.
Oh, serial killers are a brand new thing.
And not to say that serial killers did not exist before this. It's
the
just
term.
The
term serial killers.
And the whole concept of there being people who commit murders, a series of murders, is just a newly accepted
Yeah,
thing.
I mean, we're talking like the birth of Robert Ressler's.
Yes.
Who
So it's
we
very
love.
new. So while we were being kind of judgmental of the police not being able to put 2 and 2 together earlier,
This is a new
a
phenomenon.
sequential murderer wasn't exactly something that was on their radar.
No, it's not something that they dealt with a lot. They didn't see serial killers as a thing. And in their experience, people didn't kill for reasons of lust.
Yeah. So anyways, the police are kind of in hot pursuit, and they're staking out all the local locations where attractive young women
Are hanging out. Well, one of the girls who actually meets up with Jerry informs the police and gives them a description. So Jerry must have like given her the creeps.
Yeah, and I think that the police their presence was known on the campus, and I'm gonna assume that maybe the police had said something to put their feelers out there.
It could have been.
But regardless, so Jerry hits her up and wants to go on a second date. If you could see me now, I'm doing air quotations.
Yeah.
AKA
I wonder
murdered.
if he really wanted to go on a date with her or if he wanted to murder her.
I definitely think he wanted to murder her.
No, I wonder if he like was seeing like Darcy 2.0.
I mean, yeah, maybe. He's still married to Darcy.
He is still married to Darcy.
Yeah. So she was like, okay, sets it up. Meanwhile, runs and goes tells the police officers. So when he arrives at the college, the police officers
are like, hey, dude, we want to talk to you.
We need to talk to you. But nay, I say. His credentials and his story and everything just falls into place.
Well, he's very cooperative. He answers their questions. And the police are like, okay. But they do still have some suspicions about him and start looking into his background.
Yeah, so of course, they're going to run a background check on him, and they find out, oh, look at this series
of unfortunate events
that he's been involved with. So that causes them to decide to go to his home to ask him more questions. And while they're there, some red flags start popping up.
See some very suspicious items.
So it is enough for them to be able to have enough evidence to get a warrant.
Yes.
Now, the warrant is not for the murders, though.
No. The warrant is just, they think there might be something going on. They're not really sure what it is.
The warrant was for the 14-year-old girl.
Yeah.
So there must have been something there that they were able to link to her in some way. That's the only way that I can think that they would specifically choose for the 14-year-old girl to get the warrant for.
I mean, I couldn't really find any concrete, like, this is what the warrant was for. But they definitely get a warrant to bring him in. And when they actually go to arrest him, he tries to flee. Mm-hmm. But he's not successful. They capture him, and they bring him in to interrogate him.
So ever the flaming piece of garbage that he is, he contacts his wife, Darcy, and is like, hey, can you burn all of those clothes, all those women's lingerie and evidence? And she's like, no. No,
fuck you.
Can't.
No.
Thank you, Darcy. Thank you for that one.
So, June 2nd, 1969, Jerry confesses to the murders of the recently discovered bodies of Linda and Karen, and he also admits to killing Linda Slauson and Jan Whitney.
He is arraigned and pleads not guilty by reason of insanity. And while nobody is going to argue that this dude has some shit fucked up with him,
the psychiatrists deem him to be sane.
He is not insane. He is not insane.
Yep. They actually have several different psychiatrists examine Jerry, and the psychiatrists say that he is sane, but shows above average IQ and cognition. And he's also diagnosed with anti-personality manifested by fetishism, transvesticism, which I'm assuming it's like a transvestite.
I think that's an outdated moniker.
Yeah. Exhibitionism, which, okay, we get that.
Voyeurism
and sadism. So check. Yep, all those match him. But yeah, I mean, they basically are just like, yeah, no, he's sane. He has an above average IQ. He knows what the fuck he's doing.
So I wanted to note that I can't remember if we've really discussed this before. We definitely have kind of touched on it, that having APD does not equate being insane.
No.
And I think we mentioned there's neuroscientists, doctors, lawyers, very well renowned, educated, and productive members of society.
You can have APD and be a productive, non-piece of shit member of society.
And most people who have APD, we have this on our Instagram because I wanted to make this very clear since it pops up a lot in the serial killers. You can have APD and not be violent, not be angry, and not harm anybody else in society.
Yes.
So I just felt like that was really important because we deal with serial killers and we talk so much about things like APD and schizophrenia and all that stuff. Having those disorders
does not equal you being a terrible person.
And does not equate to being crazy.
No.
You can be those things and not be crazy. And the stigma is that if you have something like schizophrenia, that you are crazy. And that's not the case at all.
That's not. And that's something that we definitely, one of the reasons why we do this podcast is to explore the psychology behind serial killers, but also help break down some of that stigma with your everyday normal folks who also suffer.
Yeah.
Or, live with these
nobody ever
conditions.
says, they say that in all these true crime things you find, they tell you what the person has, but they never make any attempt to say, hey, lots of people have this. It's really not that big of a deal.
Right.
So I just like to throw that shit in there, that you can be a normal functioning motherfucking human.
Also,
and not kill people.
We need to point out that if you have fetishes, and if you're a transvestite, and if you're an exhibitionist, that also doesn't make you a bad person.
No.
That's just your sexual preference. And as long as you are doing these things with other consenting adults and not hurting anyone.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're hurting them in a BDSM kind of way and they're there for it, the point is two consenting adults.
Yes, consent is the number one thing.
Consenting
Consent.
adults. Also, adults over 18, folks, please and thank you. So,
Anyways, segueing back. So Jerome is charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, and he's sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences because there was no death penalty in Oregon.
Yeah.
And I'm fairly certain he probably would have got it.
Probably.
Had there been one.
So he's charged with the murders of Jan Whitney, Linda Saley, and Karen Sprinkler. He was not charged with the death of Linda Slauson because they never found her body. Mm. And so they couldn't prove that he did or didn't kill her. So at this point, Jerry changes his plea to guilty. So he never actually goes through like a trial. He just pleads guilty. He says, yes, I did these things. And he gets the 3 consecutive life sentences.
I find that to be interesting. Because very rarely, I mean, initially he tried to plead insanity.
He tried to plead guilty. Yeah.
I mean, him and his lawyers must have decided that there was no way a jury would, have any sort of sympathy for him.
No, he probably, it says the psychiatrist found that he had an above average IQ and cognition. He obviously knew what was going on, and I'm sure at that point the lawyers were just like, bro, just
yeah. Well,
plead
I
guilty.
only bring it up because sometimes, even though you've committed the murder and you plead guilty or whatever, they do still try to take it to trial to see if you can get a lesser sentence.
I mean, he was charged with all 3 murders. Yeah, so he confessed to committing them. I don't know what he could have gotten. I mean, it's murder.
Any left. Yeah,
I don't know that he could have gotten anything left.
Well, regardless, later that year in 1969, a neighbor actually implicated his wife, Darcy, in one of the murders, and she said that Darcy helped Jerry carry a body from the garage, which that right there tells me that she was bullshitting anyways, because Darcy, for one, I don't think Darcy even gave a fuck about what he was doing.
No, I don't think Darcy gave 2 shits.
But if she wouldn't even burn his the lingerie for him, I highly doubt that she's
and to
gonna
be
carry
honest,
a
like,
body from the house to the garage.
If the neighbor supposedly saw her carrying this body, why didn't she call the police right then and there? To me, that doesn't make any sense.
I think she just wanted in on the gossip.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, anyway, Darcy is charged with aiding and abetting first-degree murder of Karen Sprinkler. So Darcy actually has to go through this whole bullshit, and she testifies and says she had no idea what was going on and had absolutely no involvement, and she's found not guilty.
But this takes up an entire year of her life.
Yep. And I mean, I feel bad for the girl. She eventually files for divorce from Jerry, moves, changes her name, and obtained a court order to prohibit her children from visiting or ever writing to Jerry.
And I agree with you that I really feel for her because for one, he's the breadwinner.
Yes.
He's the one that supports the family.
Correct.
Now she's a single mother with 2 children. And these children are older. They're what age now? When did they
Gosh,
first
how
get...
old would they have been at this point?
Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're not that much older. Let me see. So maybe she has...
Well, Jason...
Yeah, no, they're 2... I'm sorry. She has 2 young children.
Yeah.
So suddenly she's lost all of her income. She's not going to have any way to get any money. She's a single mom. And her husband is not only just
flaming pile of garbage.
Not only just a fucking criminal, but a sadistic murderer. And this happened at her home.
And who knows, like, what shit he put her through.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of information on this shit that he put Darcy through. But I can only imagine it was a good amount of bullshit.
So you have all this stuff, and then you have... I'm sorry, this is just me making my own assumptions, but this woman coming up with this rumor and then giving it to the police, who then take it very, very seriously.
Yeah.
So it rocked this girl's poor entire world.
Yeah.
So fucked up. Well, anyways, so...
She's not guilty. She
not
moves,
guilty.
changes her name. Her kids are never going to see Jerry.
BRUDOS comes back to the courts a few times because he's allowed to go like every 2 years to try
and he's not even he's allowed. The way Oregon life sentences are set up, every 2 years he has to go before the parole board.
He has to.
Yeah, I don't know if it's still set up that way, but in 1999 is when he's eligible first for parole. And the board makes it very clear that they're never going to let him out of prison. They're just like, absolutely fucking not. But the way the Oregon state law is set up is that he has to go before the parole board every 2 years.
I thought it was him doing it every 2 years.
No, he's forced to.
Okay. Well, anyways, on March 28th of 2006, BRUDOS dies of liver cancer at the age of 67.
Bye, bitch.
Couldn't have happened to a better motherfucker.
Yeah.
So that was Jerome BRUDOS.
Ugh. Oh, so little fun segue here. If you're interested in Jerome BRUDOS, Mindhunters on Netflix did an episode about him, and it's in the first season, episode 7, where they interview him, and it is a hella disturbing episode.
I know I saw that episode, but I don't know if I can remember it.
It's one of those episodes that made me went, ew. Well, in order to get him to talk, they bring him a red high-heeled shoe.
Yes, okay. I did remember.
And I'm not going to spoil it anymore for anyone who wants to go and watch it, but it definitely was well done and made me cringe.
Well, here's some fast facts. So he was actually treated at the same psychiatric hospital as the one that Robert De Niro was in The One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh.
Which I thought
that's a fun fact.
He used to make his wife cook, clean, do all kinds of housework naked and nothing but heels, which, to anybody else, ooh, kinky, that's so cool and awesome.
He's got a shoe fetish, though, so it's like, oh.
So, well, just knowing what his fetishes and shit are, just period, it's like, And she was only 17, so, ugh.
I mean, that's probably what kept him like so chill for so many years.
That's what I'm saying, because she was his type. And his MO
she
and
played along with what he wanted.
So another fast fact: he secretly dressed in women's clothing and would wear women's clothing under his actual work uniforms and work clothes. When we talked about how he would steal these things from women to feel in control, but he specifically stole them from women that he liked or found to be attractive.
Which, again, plays into the fetish that he had. I get it.
While in jail, he would specifically write to and contact shoe magazines, women's shoe magazines, to have them send magazines to him that he used to supplement as like pornographic material.
Alrighty then.
And here's one for you, Chelsea. In 2005, he was pursuing his master's degree in counseling psychology at Oregon State Penitentiary, and he has had two bachelor degrees. Psychology.
I can't.
Psychology.
I can't.
Chelsea,
this fucked up individual wants to study psychology. That fucking bastard.
But do you know what they say about people who study psychology?
Yes, they're
Chelsea?
crazy and fucked up. It's fine. We're all fine, okay?
Oh my God.
It's like, I don't know.
I know.
Ugh.
So how I talked about, he made a paperweight out of those boobs. He would cast them in resin. So if you know what that, like literally it would be like a clear globe.
With a boob
in it. And yeah, he used that as a paperweight. Fucking horrible.
Fucking weirdo.
All right. Well, do we palate cleanser?
Should we Dahmer scale him first?
Yeah, let's Dahmer scale him while we remember, so we don't fuck it up this time.
So I'm gonna give him a 7.
So I have my own suspicions, something that we did not necessarily talk about. While he has 4 confirmed kills and he was convicted of 3,
there are 12 women who went missing in that time period.
Other women who went missing that kind of fit that MO in that time period. So that would make, if he did kill them, that would make the grand total 16. So
yeah, I don't know. I'm still sticking with a 7 because the guy that we're doing next,
it's pretty bad.
Oh, he really just knocks Jerry down for me.
All right, I'll settle on a 7 with you. Because
while he's terrible and gross, I mean, he wasn't eating them.
Ugh, God. I think it's time for the palate cleanser.
Yeah.
Palate cleanser. This is the palate cleanser. Boo boo. Boo boo. Boo boo.
Oh, let's see if I can find some shoe fetish memes. It's a picture of Oprah. I think you know the picture I'm talking about. She goes, "You get a serial killer. You get a serial killer. Everyone gets a serial killer." Oh, so it's got a match on Tinder and they're a serial killer.
Yes.
Oh, let's see. Oh, this is Charles Manson. And it says, "Will you let Jesus into your heart? 1 like equals 1 prayer. 100 likes equals full spiritual redemption." It's that meme of the monkey where it's like looking forward and then it's looking to the side. Do you know which one I'm talking about? This guy?
Oh, yeah. The skeptical monkey.
The skeptical monkey. It says, every documentary about serial killers. He was alone. He had no friends. He had no lover. He spent all his time alone at home. Me. Skeptical monkey face. Oh, man. Oh, we got a Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer one.
Here
These
we
are
go.
always the best ones.
Hit us up.
Hey, Ted. Why don't cannibals eat clowns? Why? Because they taste funny. LOL. And then at the bottom, it's a picture of Gacy that says, "Fuck you guys."
Oh my God. All right. I think that's good. I think we got enough. All right, guys. That is enough of Jerome BRUDOS. We're done.
Fuck
done.
That guy. We're done. He reminds me a lot of Kemper in some ways.
In some ways. Not nearly as brilliant as Kemper. I hate to like...
Not nearly as brilliant.
I mean it literally... I mean it literally as in intelligent and articulate as Kemper. Not as, oh my God, Kemper's amazing. No, I am not that kind of fangirl.
Yes, I know what you mean.
I'm a psychology fangirl, not a serial killer fangirl.
I knew what you meant.
Y'all need better idols.
Okay, Bailey Sarian.
I was just going to say, per Bailey Sarian, y'all need better idols if you're going, oh my God, Ed Kemper is just amazing. No. We do not idolize serial killers. We idolize the amazing psychologists who dissect their brains and give us the much needed answers to why they're so fucked up.
Yes.
So if you enjoy our podcast, you should really rate us and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Where else can they leave reviews? Chelsea, I've had a couple of people ask.
Yeah, apparently you can't leave reviews on Spotify, which...
Horseshit.
Spotify, get your shit together.
Get your shit together, Spotify.
But if you listen on Apple, if you would please do us the huge favor of leaving us a review there, we would appreciate it. I'm not sure if Google Podcast allows you to or not.
We're part of the Apple community, so Google, I don't know how your shit works.
But if you don't use Apple or Google, you can always go to our Facebook page and leave us a review there.
Yeah. Or hit us up on Instagram.
Yeah. Leave us some love on Instagram. Send us a message. Leave us a comment. So you can definitely find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Killer T. If you would love to send us an email or suggestions, you can reach us at thekillerT@gmail.com. And yeah.
I love that I couldn't remember what it was, even though I was the one who created the Instagram. Doing great.
You're doing awesome. You're doing so good, sweetie.
Good. All right, y'all. Until next week.
Bye. Join us next week where we dive into the real life Buffalo Bill, Gary Heidnick.